You don't understand your lab results. And it's not because you're not smart, it's because the way lab results are presented, it was, they were never designed for you to understand them. Okay, what happened? You get your results back, you open a portal, you see numbers, you see ranges, you see flags, and almost immediately you feel one of two things: confusion or anxiety, sometimes both. And from that moment forward, you start guessing. So here's what's actually happening. Lab results give you data, but they don't give you meaning. Because you'll see numbers, you'll see reference ranges, you'll see high or these low flags. And what you won't see is what this actually means for you, what matters versus what doesn't, how this connects to your symptoms, what you should do next. So naturally, you're trying to interpret something that requires context you were never given. And that's where confusion begins because healthcare often assumes that if information was provided, understanding automatically happened. But those are not the same thing, okay? Seeing a number is not the same as understanding it. Reading a diagnosis is not the same as knowing what it means for your life. And this gap is much bigger than people realize. When you don't fully understand your health information, you start filling in the blanks yourself, right? And that's where the fear, the assumptions, the avoidance, and the information, they start taking over, right? So let's be clear, all right? One of the biggest misunderstandings in healthcare is the word normal, because you've probably done this before. Okay, you get your labs back, you scan the page, you see everything sitting inside the reference range, and you immediately tell yourself, okay, I guess I'm fine. But meanwhile, you still feel exhausted. You still feel foggy. You still feel inflamed. And you still feel like something in your body is off. And that disconnect is incredibly frustrating, right? Because now you start questioning yourself. You start saying, okay, maybe I'm overreacting. Okay, maybe it's just stress. Maybe it's all in my head. But here's what you need to understand: normal does not automatically mean optimal. It does not automatically mean healthy, or it does not automatically mean fully understood. And it definitely does not mean your symptoms are not real, because those ranges you're looking at, that's statistical ranges. They are based on population averages, not you. It is not your baseline. It is not your medical history. It is not your symptom patterns. It is not your genetics. It is not your lifestyle. And it's definitely not how your body normally functions. And this distinction matters. And so, what we're going to do right now, we're actually going to take a beat, and I want to show you an example of the normal range and how it applies to me. So, we are going to have a gander at one of my lab results. I just want to show you very quickly. Okay, so what we see here, this right here is my CBC, and um, everything looks normal, right? Everything is within the green. So with these values, the yellow is usually for abnormal or out of range. The greens are within the range. So you're looking at the white blood cell count, red blood cell count, and hemoglobin and so forth. But the truth of the matter is, hemoglobin for me, this hemoglobin falls within the normal range, but for me, this is not good. I am a kidney transplant recipient, and my hemoglobin, because this is my medical history, this is my lifestyle, this is my story. My hemoglobin range needs to be below 12. It actually needs to be between 10 and 12. So anything that is over 12 means that my kidney is putting in extra work to get that red blood cell pumping throughout my body to talk to my stem cells to say, hey, I need for you to produce some red blood cells. All right. Because this person right here really needs it. Okay. And that is not good for me. So this is a prime example with this hemoglobin that normal is not always necessarily good. Okay. So yes, just wanted to show you that very quickly. And so now we're going to get back to the matters at hand. Okay. All right. So when we're talking about the numbers, um, these numbers talk about what's changing. These numbers talk about what patterns are developing. These numbers talk about whether they actually match what you're experiencing, okay? But you can have a normal thyroid result while you're still experiencing fatigue, you're experiencing hair loss, brain fog, weight changes, mood shifts. And if nobody explains the nuance, you walk away thinking, well, I guess nothing's wrong, even though your body is clearly telling you otherwise, okay? Now, on the flip side, sometimes you'll see something flagged as abnormal and you panic, but not every abnormal result means danger or disease or emergency. You know, some abnormalities are mild, temporary, expected, or clinically insignificant without other findings, just like in my case. My abnormal is actually good for me, it's expected. But because nobody explains context, you're left alone trying to interpret medical information emotionally, and that's dangerous because emotion without understanding almost always creates fear, okay? So when you look at your labs, I need you to stop thinking in black and white. I want you to just realize that not normal means good and abnormal means bad. Okay, that's too simplistic. The better question is, what does this mean in the context of my health? That's the question most people never get answered. And that's when clarity starts to matter. Okay. So the issue isn't the numbers themselves, it's the lack of interpretation around them. Because real understanding does not come from staring at one isolated result. It comes from context or patterns, trends, symptoms, timing, and clinical interpretation. But when you get your lab results, that's usually not what you're seeing. What you're seeing is one snapshot, just one moment in time, separated from the big picture. However, you're expected to somehow draw conclusions from that. And that is incredibly difficult to do without guidance because healthcare is rarely about one number. It's about relationships between numbers. It's about how things move over time. It's about whether something is improving or worsening, stabilizing, or slowly trending in the wrong direction. And most of you are never taught how to look at your health in that way. So naturally, you end up hyperfixating on whatever has the little red flag next to it, right? Or in my case, it would be yellow. Meanwhile, the real story may actually be in the pattern, the combination, or the trend over several months. And this is where you start missing the important nuance because sometimes your body starts whispering before it starts screaming. And sometimes small changes matter. And it's not because it's catastrophic, but because it may be pointing towards something developing over time. So if you only look at each lab result individually, you miss the broader picture. Another thing you miss is that labs don't exist separately from symptoms. And this is important because healthcare is not just what do the numbers say, it's also what are you experiencing? How do you feel? What's changed? What symptoms keep showing up? What feels different in your body? Because if your symptoms and your labs don't align, that matters too. And this is where many people are often dismissed or they feel dismissed because they're told your labs look fine, even though they know something feels wrong. And that creates confusion, self doubt, and sometimes years of delayed understanding. So when I say you're missing context, I mean the meaning behind the numbers, the relationship between results, the trends over time, and how all of it connects back to you. And that's the difference between having information and actually understanding your health. And most people have far more information than they do understanding. Hmm. So when you don't understand your lab results, you don't just sit there calmly, you react. And if you're honest, you've probably done at least one of these, and maybe even all of them. You ignore it, you look at your results, and you don't fully understand them. And instead of asking more questions, you tell yourself, if it was serious, someone would have said something, right? I've been there. And so what do? You just move on, go on about your life. You don't follow up. You don't dig deeper. You don't ask for clarity. And for a moment, that feels like peace. But listen, it's not clarity. That is avoidance. And the truth is, because things in healthcare, there are these things in healthcare that don't get addressed unless you bring them up. So now you have information, but it never turns into understanding and it never turns into action. Right. And another thing you may do, my favorite, Dr. Google, you take a number from your lab results, you type it into Google, and instantly you're hit with worst case scenarios, generic explanations, conflicting information. Now, instead of one question, you've got 10. And instead of clarity, you feel even more confused because, Google, I'm not dismissing Google, but Google it provides information without context, possibilities without prioritization, and answers that aren't specific to you. So now you're trying to apply this generalized information to your personal health, and that rarely works, right? And then something else you may do, panic. And you panic because you see something flagged as high or low, and you don't recognize what it means. So your mind just immediately goes to, oh my gosh, something is wrong. But you don't actually know just how serious it is, or how urgent it is, or more importantly, what it really means. And so your brain fills in the gaps. And when your brain fills in the gaps without clarity, it almost always goes negative, right? And that then leads to anxiety, not because of the result itself, but because you don't understand it, right? And you follow instructions without understanding, you trust your doctor, you follow the plan, you take your medication. But if you're honest, you don't fully understand the why. Why are you doing it? Right? You don't fully understand what it's addressing, or you don't fully understand what success even looks like. So if something changes, you don't know how to respond because you were given directions, but not understanding. And without understanding, you don't actually have ownership of your care. Okay. And then my favorite, you repeat the cycle. And I'm very guilty of this. Okay. So every time you get new labs or new results, you go through the same loop. There's confusion, guessing, temporary reassurance, more confusion, but nothing builds, nothing compounds, and you're starting over every time. And over time, that creates distance between you and your own health. So think about that. And none of these are the real problem. They're all symptoms of the same thing. You do not have enough clarity because when you don't understand something, you either avoid it, outsource it, or fear it, but you don't actually engage with it. And this is exactly why I built Alvora.health to solve this because people are being given information without understanding and then expected to make decisions from it. So Alvora.health changes that. It helps you break down your lab results. It helps you understand what actually matters, and it helps you figure out what to ask next. So you're not guessing, you're actually informed, and you're able to participate in your care because more confidence and more clarity, and we deserve more than access to information. You deserve understanding. So if you ever looked at your lab results and thought, I don't fully understand what this means, that's not a small problem. That is the problem. Because better clarity leads to better understanding, and better understanding leads to better outcomes. So if you want to start understanding your lab results in simpler terms, I put together a free guide to help you do exactly that. And you can find more information about it in the description. See you next time.